Some time ago, my writing students asked me for a prompt, and I told them to begin their true stories with the words, "I never imagined." That got me thinking about what I might write in response. Here it is. I never imagined I would be so good at castrating pigs. And at plucking and disemboweling turkeys, and at milking cows and goats, and at driving a team of draft horses, and at splitting wood, cutting up steers, and you get the point. I, who had grown up in an apartment in Brooklyn, New York, became adept at life skills. Well, life skills if you happen to be living in the Middle Ages. I hadn't imagined when I met my husband John as an undergraduate that his deepest desire would be to have a fiefdom. First things first, arrive in Maine after graduate school and buy 200 acres in Waldo County. The feudal lord needs a wife, that would be me, and serfs, that would be our 5 children. A big barn, check. Hay fields, check. A 1-acre garden, check. And animals to fill the barn, eat the hay, plow the fields, and feed the workers. I don't mean to imply that I was in thrall. I married enthusiastically and participated willingly in a life that taught me and our children how to work hard and how to enjoy the fruits and vegetables and flesh of that labor. I'm pretty sure that they're alone in their social groups in having stood on a hay wagon and forked hay onto a threshing floor. This was the 1970s in Maine, the center of the Back to the Land movement, when hordes of urban young people, middle class, came to Maine for a better life, one closer to the rhythms and rituals of the earth. They augmented their trust funds by growing and selling herbs and herbal concoctions. Did. By growing vegetables for barter and by making macrame, which somehow always ended up as plant hangers holding wandering Jews. Right? They had outhouses or Clivus Mulstrom composting toilets. They heated with wood. They did without electricity or running water, and they smoked a lot of weed. And sooner or later, having gotten more than they'd bargained for or imagined, they went back to their comfort zones. We stayed. Back to those pigs. We sold some of the piglets, others we fed until they were big enough to slaughter and put in one of our 2 enormous freezers, but the male piglets needed castrating. For that, you need a disinfectant, a razor blade, and, well, you can imagine. And what about the other animals in the barn? The workhorses, of course, took up the most space, but the cows took up most of the day's labor. Milked twice a day, they gave far more milk than we or 10 cats could use. You've got to do something with all that milk and cream, so you make butter. After having used a centrifugal cream separator, pack it into a wooden butter press and sell what you won't eat. And the chickens, you collect the eggs and then sell the surplus. When you raise 30 turkeys for Thanksgiving, you sell them plucked and cleaned, and most of them weigh between 20 and 30 pounds. When your garden measures about an acre, you spend all summer harvesting, canning, freezing, and pickling. By the time late fall comes, you have 2 freezers stuffed with beef, pork, chicken, rabbits, and turkeys and vegetables. You have shelves in the basement crowded with quart jars of tomatoes, jams and jellies, pickles and relishes. And then it's winter, and you start burning the cords of hardwood you'd cut down. The horses had skidded out of the woods you'd cut into stove lengths and split. Winter brings snow, of course, and you attach a V-plow to the horses so that they can keep the driveway clear. It wasn't any sort of paradise I'd imagined, but we all took pride in the bounty we had created. And then, as feudal lords often do, John fell in love. He explained that our marriage had been but a 30-year interregnum. That with the help of a regression therapist in Rockland, he'd been able to revisit his many past lives, in every one of which he'd been married not to me, but to the love of his every other life until this one. I don't mean to make light of betrayal and abandonment, neither of which I had ever imagined. Although, as many of you know, with time comes the ability to see the human tragedy as more of a divine comedy. And yes, when I left the farm in 1993, it was more expulsion than departure. My friend David came to get me, and we loaded everything I was taking into the horse trailer pulled by his pickup truck. On the way to Belfast and my new home, I gently refused his invitation to go to the Calgary rodeo, but accepted his offer to unload the trailer. And so I arrived in Belfast and departed from there to live in Blue Hill and then Brooklyn 25 years ago. I had never expected to fall in love again, and not to someone I'd known in previous lives. I had never imagined this life, where I look every day at the ocean instead of hay fields, sharing this life with my artist husband, Bill, and our dog, Tam. But really, isn't that the pattern of our lives and of all life? Coming and going, arriving, departing, leaving the dock and returning, getting to work, and then leaving work for home, clocking in and clocking out over and over again, just as the tide ebbs and flows, as the moon waxes and wanes. Someday, of course, no spoiler here, a departure will be the final one. Will there, do you suppose, be a final arrival? An existence beyond this one? We can only imagine.